Do you trust the products you use every day? The toothpaste, the makeup, the medicine. In 1917, a group of young women found the perfect job. It paid well, it was glamorous, and it gave them a magical ability. They glowed in the dark. They were told the paint was harmless. They were told it would make them beautiful. But it was a lie that would cost them their lives in the most gruesome way imaginable. The corporation knew the truth, and they decided that the profit was worth more than the bones disintegrating inside these girls' bodies. If you think big companies have stopped lying to you today, you are wrong. Watch this until the end, because the story of the Radium Girls isn't just history. It is a warning. To understand this tragedy, we have to go back to a time when radiation wasn't feared, it was worshipped. The year is 1917. The First World War is raging across Europe. In Orange, New Jersey, a factory called the United States Radium Corporation opens its doors with a patriotic mission: to supply the army with watches that glow in the dark. This was high-tech stuff. At the time, the secret ingredient was a new, magical element discovered by Marie Curie, called radium. It was the most expensive substance on Earth. It was marketed as a miracle cure. People drank radium water to cure arthritis. They used radium toothpaste to make their teeth white. It was the health craze of the century. The factory hired hundreds of young women. It was the dream job. It paid 3 times more than typical factory work. The girls sat in rows, dipping fine camel hair brushes into a mixture of radium powder and glue, painting the tiny numbers on watch dials. But there was a catch. The brushes would lose their fine point after a few strokes. To keep the numbers sharp, the supervisors taught the girls a specific technique: lip, dip, paint. Put the brush in your mouth to sharpen the tip. Dip it in the radium. Paint the dial. Put it back in your mouth. Lip, dip, paint. Hundreds of times a day. Every single time they did this, they were swallowing a tiny amount of radioactive dust. The girls asked the managers, "Is this safe?" The managers, sitting in their offices, wearing protective gear when they handled the raw material, looked at the girls and said, "It is absolutely safe. It will make your cheeks rosy." The girls believed them. In fact, they loved the product. The dust covered their clothes, their hair, and their skin. When they walked home at night, they literally glowed in the dark like angels. They were nicknamed the Ghost Girls. They would wear their best dresses to work so they would sparkle at dance halls on the weekend. They even painted their teeth with the radium to surprise their boyfriends with a glowing smile. They were eating death, and nobody stopped them. For about 5 years, everything seemed fine. Radium is a slow killer. It mimics calcium. The human body sees radium and thinks, "Oh, this is calcium. Let's use it to build bones." So, it deposits the radioactive material deep inside the skeleton. Once it is there, it bombards the surrounding tissue with alpha particles, destroying the bone from the inside out. Forever. The first sign of the horror came in 1922. One of the workers, a vibrant 24-year-old named Molly Magia, went to the dentist. She had a toothache. It seemed routine. The dentist pulled the tooth, but the gum didn't heal. It started to rot. Huge, painful ulcers filled with pus and blood formed in her mouth. Then, the tooth next to it started hurting. The dentist pulled that one too. And the next one. Soon, Molly had no teeth left in her lower jaw. But the pain didn't stop. It spread to her limbs. She couldn't walk. Her hips felt like they were shattering. One day, the dentist gently touched her jawbone to inspect an abscess. To his absolute horror, the jawbone broke against his finger. He didn't use force. He simply lifted the bone out of her mouth. Her entire mandible had disintegrated. It was necrotic. Dead. Molly Magia was literally falling apart while she was still alive. The infection spread to her throat. It ate through her jugular vein. She died of a massive hemorrhage, drowning in her own blood at the age of 24. But the company couldn't let this get out. If people knew their paint killed Molly, their profits would vanish. So, they did something evil. They pressured the doctors to falsify her death certificate. They wrote that Molly McGee died of syphilis. Think about the cruelty of that. In the 1920s, syphilis was a shameful, sexually transmitted disease. They slit shamed her in death to cover up their crime. They blamed the victim to protect the stock price. And because of this lie, the other girls kept working. They kept licking the brushes. Lip. Dip. Paint. Paint. By 1924, dozens of girls were sick. The symptoms were consistent. Anemia, bone fractures from simply walking, and the terrifying radium jaw. A Harvard professor, Dr. Cecil Drinker, was hired by the corporation to investigate the factory conditions. He found the factory was heavily contaminated. Every surface glowed. The workers were radioactive. He wrote a report stating clearly, "The paint is killing the girls." The president of the United States Radium Corporation received the report. He didn't fix the factory. He didn't warn the girls. Instead, he rewrote the report. He edited out all the negative parts and released a fake version, saying the factory was perfectly safe and the girls were in excellent health. He then threatened to sue Dr. Drinker if he published the original findings. The girls were alone. Doctors were being paid off. The media believed the company, and the girls were dying one by one. But they refused to go quietly. Enter Grace Fryer. She was one of the ghost girls her spine was, collapsing because the radium had honeycombed her vertebrae. She decided to sue, but it was almost impossible to find a lawyer. No one wanted to go against a powerful corporation. They were told the statute of limitations has passed, or you can't prove it was the radium. It took her 2 years to find an attorney willing to take the case. By then, Grace and her friends were bedridden. They could barely raise their hands to take the oath in court. To prove their case, they had to do something macabre. They requested the exhumation of Molly McGee's body, the first girl who died 5 years earlier. When they opened Molly's coffin, the truth was undeniable. Even after 5 years of decomposition, her corpse was not resting in peace. Her bones were glowing. They placed her remains in front of a Geiger counter. The machine went crazy. The clicking sound of the radiation was the voice of Molly McGee, screaming the truth from the grave. She didn't have syphilis. She was a nuclear reactor in a coffin. The trial of the Radium Girls became a media sensation. The images of these young, beautiful women, crippled and dying, shocked the world. The company tried every dirty trick in the book. They delayed the court dates, hoping the girls would die before they could testify. And many of them did. In the end, the company settled. The girls won a small amount of money in medical expenses. But for most of them, it was too late. The money would only pay for their funerals. However, their sacrifice was not in vain. The case of the Radium Girls changed labor laws forever. It led to the creation of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. It established the legal right for workers to sue companies for damages. Every time you see a hazardous material warning at a job site today, you have to thank Grace Fryer, Molly Marchia, and the Ghost Girls. They paid for those safety regulations with their jaws, their spines, and their lives. But the story has one final, haunting detail. Radium has a half-life of 1,600 years. That means it takes 16 centuries for it to lose half its potency. The bodies of the Radium Girls were buried in lead-lined coffins to contain the radiation. But even today, if you were to go to their graves with a Geiger counter, you would hear it clicking. More than 100 years later, they are still glowing in the dark, 6 feet under. This story forces us to ask a difficult question. What is the radium of our generation? What is the product we are using today, believing it is safe, that will be killing us in 20 years? Is it microplastics? Is it vapes? Is it something in our food? The companies lied then. Do you think they are telling the truth now? If this story made your blood boil, subscribe to the channel. We expose the dark history they don't teach you in school. Comment below. What modern product do you think will be revealed as deadly in the future? I'll see you in the next file.